You are not hearing these words by chance, chosen one. They arrive in your life with precise timing, as though heaven has quietly guided them to your doorstep in the exact hour your spirit has been asking questions that your mouth could not fully form. Something in you has known for a long time that the reactions people have toward you do not match what you have actually done. You have stepped into rooms and felt the temperature change without any visible reason. You have noticed conversations pause, glances shift, and an unspoken tension gather around you, even when you enter with a peaceful heart and clean intentions. You have carried the weight of being treated like a mystery by people who have never truly taken the time to know you. And deep inside, you have wondered what it is they think they see. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Because what you are about to understand is not small, it is not shallow, it is not another empty explanation meant to flatter you. It is a door opening into a truth that may finally help you make sense of years of strange resistance, silent judgment, and unexplained fear. You have spent enough time questioning yourself. You have replayed old moments in your mind, asking whether you said something wrong, whether your silence seemed cold, whether your confidence came across in a way you never intended. You have looked back on encounters where people seemed uncomfortable around you and tried to find a logical cause. Sometimes you blamed your difference. Sometimes you blamed your quietness. Sometimes you blamed your honesty. But the deeper truth is that not every reaction people have toward you is born from something you did. Some reactions are awakened by something you carry. That is what begins to change for you now. You start to see that the strange tension around you is not random chaos. It is not just social awkwardness. It is not always misunderstanding in the ordinary sense. Often it is a pattern, a spiritual pattern, a deeper response that rises in people before their minds can even explain it. They feel something before they understand it. They react before they can name it. And because they cannot explain what your presence stirs inside them, they give that discomfort a story. They call you intimidating. They call you distant. They call you too much, too quiet, too serious, too intense, too different. But these labels are often only wrappers placed around a feeling they do not know how to hold. You must understand this gently, not arrogantly. This is not about walking around believing you are better than anyone. It is not about feeding ego. In fact, the more mature your spirit becomes, the less interested you are in superiority. This is about clarity. It is about finally realizing that what happens around you has meaning. There is a reason your life has often included seasons where people project onto you without cause. There is a reason some have admired you from a distance while others resisted you without evidence. There is a reason your calm has made restless people uneasy. There is a reason your sincerity has unsettled those who survive through performance. The pattern is not imaginary. It is real, and once you begin to recognize it, you stop internalizing everything that was never yours to carry. You have likely known this pattern since early in life. Even as a child, you may have sensed that people responded to you in extremes. Some were drawn to you with unusual warmth. Others treated you with suspicion before you had done anything to deserve it. In families, schools, friendships, and later in workplaces or communities, there may have been this repeating atmosphere around you, as though your very presence pressed on hidden things in people. You did not always have language for it. You only knew that something was there. You could feel it in the eyes that studied you too carefully. You could hear it in the forced politeness, the subtle exclusion, the backhanded compliments, the strange competition that appeared where there should have been none. And because you are thoughtful, you may have spent years trying to make sense of it in a purely human way. But some truths refuse to stay on the surface. Some truths ask to be seen from higher ground. And from that higher ground, you begin to notice that your life has not simply been marked by social friction. It has been marked by spiritual contrast. Your presence often acts like light entering a place that had grown used to dimness. Not loud light, not aggressive light, just clear light. And clear light has a way of revealing what was comfortable in the half-dark. People who have built themselves around masks do not relax easily in the presence of authenticity. People who depend on approval do not know what to do with someone who is not begging for it. People who live from hidden insecurity feel strangely exposed around someone who carries inner steadiness. This does not mean you are trying to expose them. It means what is settled in you begins to disturb what is unsettled in them. That is why this message matters. It is not here to make you dramatic. It is here to make you aware. When you do not understand the nature of this pattern, you can spend years shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. You can soften your voice when it does not need softening. You can apologize for your nature when there is nothing wrong with it. You can hide your insight, dim your conviction, and question your peace, all because other people react to you in ways that seem larger than the situation itself. You can begin shaping yourself around their unease, and that is one of the saddest things that can happen to a chosen one. Not open rejection, not even false judgment, but gradual self-abandonment. A slow attempt to become smaller so that unhealed people do not feel threatened. Yet you were never meant to disappear inside other people's comfort. You were never sent here to become easier to digest for those who fear depth, truth, or spiritual weight. There is a reason your path has felt different. There is a reason you cannot fully merge with environments that ask you to betray your spirit. There is a reason your life keeps teaching you that peace does not come from being accepted by everyone. Peace comes from alignment. Peace comes from understanding who you are and refusing to distort yourself every time someone reacts to your light. So let this first truth settle deeply into you. The resistance you feel is not always proof that something is wrong. Sometimes it is proof that something is real. Sometimes it is confirmation that your presence carries a weight people cannot easily dismiss. Sometimes it means your life is touching nerves that have been hidden beneath smiles, roles, and carefully maintained appearances. You do not need to become paranoid about this. You do not need to assume every difficult interaction is spiritual warfare. But you do need discernment. You do need enough self-respect to stop assuming that every shadow cast in your direction is evidence of your own failure. This is where your healing begins in this message. Not by learning to control what others feel, but by learning to read your life correctly. Not by demanding that everyone understand you, but by releasing the exhausting habit of over-explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Not by becoming cold, but by becoming clear. There is a difference. Clarity allows you to remain kind without becoming naive. Clarity allows you to stay open-hearted without becoming emotionally available to every projection. Clarity reminds you that being chosen does not always look glamorous. Sometimes it looks like carrying a peace that confuses people. Sometimes it looks like walking into a room and feeling resistance before you say a word. Sometimes it looks like being misread while still remaining anchored in God. And this is only the beginning of what you are being shown. For now, you simply need to hold this foundation in your spirit. The tension has a pattern. The pattern has meaning. And the meaning is not meant to crush you. It is meant to free you. Once you stop seeing yourself through the eyes of those unsettled by your presence, you begin to recover your true sight. You begin to understand that this path, though lonely at times, has never been pointless. It has been preparing you to recognize what your life has carried all along. As that foundation begins to settle inside you, you start to understand something even more subtle and perhaps even more important. People are often responding to your presence long before they are responding to your personality. This is why their reactions can seem so confusing. It is why someone can form an opinion about you before you have shared your story, before you have explained your heart, before you have done anything significant enough to justify the emotional charge they seem to carry. What they feel arrives first. Their explanation comes later, and most of the time the explanation is incomplete, inaccurate, or completely invented because they do not have the spiritual language to describe what is really happening. You have probably lived through this more times than you can count. There are moments when you enter a room with no intention other than to be present, and yet the atmosphere becomes tense, cautious, or strangely alert. It is as if something in the room notices you before people consciously do. You may not speak loudly. You may not draw attention to yourself. You may not even be trying to stand out. In fact, many chosen ones spend large parts of their lives trying not to stand out at all. They become observant, measured, peaceful. They learn to take up less space because they have noticed for years that their very existence seems to create reactions they never asked for. But the irony is this: the more you try to hide what you carry, the more unmistakable it often becomes. There is a kind of presence that cannot be manufactured. It does not come from style status, beauty charisma, or performance. It comes from inner alignment. It comes from what has been built in you privately through pain reflection, prayer, restraint, disappointment, and survival. It comes from what God has formed in you while no one was watching. People may not understand that, but they can feel it. They can feel the difference between someone who is chasing attention and someone who is carrying substance. They can feel the difference between noise and weight. They can feel the difference between a person performing confidence and a person whose spirit has been made steady by fire. And because that kind of steadiness is rare, it often unsettles those who have not yet found it in themselves. This is one of the reasons people fear you without any clear reason they can explain. Your presence quietly interrupts the habits of the room. It changes the emotional landscape. It makes hidden things feel visible. It does not need to be loud to do that. In fact, the most powerful presence is often the most still. People expect power to arrive with spectacle, with volume, with force. But spiritual weight often arrives in silence. It arrives in a person who does not need to dominate. It arrives in someone who listens carefully, speaks deliberately, and seems rooted in something deeper than the shifting mood of the crowd. That kind of person is not easy to manipulate, not easy to read, and not easy to dismiss. And when people sense that many of them do not feel inspired first, they feel exposed first. You must understand how important this is. Sometimes you have believed that you needed to become more explainable to be accepted. You thought perhaps if you smiled more, they would relax. If you shared more, they would trust you. If you softened your edges, they would stop misreading you. If you made yourself more ordinary, the pressure would ease. But your life keeps showing you that the reaction often begins before any of those adjustments can matter. Why? Because what people are encountering is not just your behavior. They are encountering your field of presence. They are sensing the order in your spirit. They are feeling the quiet authority of someone who has already had to fight internal battles they know nothing about. That quiet authority can be especially difficult for insecure people to handle. Not because you are trying to challenge them, but because your presence reminds them of everything within themselves that feels unstable. A person who lives by approval notices that you are not begging for it. A person who lives behind a mask notices that you do not seem desperate to impress. A person who survives through control notices that you are not easy to pull into emotional chaos. A person who depends on shallow attention notices that your energy is not reaching outward for validation. Even if they cannot explain these things clearly, they feel them. And once they feel them, they often start adjusting their behavior around you. Some become cold. Some become overly curious. Some become critical. Some become competitive. Some become charming in a way that feels forced. Others withdraw completely. But all of it is information. You are not imagining the way certain people study you. You are not imagining the way some try to define you too quickly. You are not imagining the strange tension that rises when you remain calm in places where people are accustomed to emotional noise. What you are seeing is the friction between your inner state and the unresolved atmosphere around you. That friction is not always dramatic. Sometimes it shows up in small things. People interrupt you more than they interrupt others. They misunderstand simple comments that were never hostile. They assign motives to your silence that do not belong there. They seem nervous about your opinion even when you have not given one. They treat your boundaries as arrogance. They act as though your stillness is disapproval. All of this comes from one core truth: your presence says something before your words ever do. And what does it say? It says that you are not easily absorbed by whatever energy surrounds you. It says that your identity is not up for public negotiation. It says that you have a center. It says that your spirit has learned not to bow to every emotional wave that passes through the room. For healed and grounded people, this can feel comforting. They feel safe around someone whose presence is clear. But for people living in inner fragmentation, it can feel alarming. Your stability makes their instability louder to them. Your peace makes their chaos easier to hear. Your discernment makes their performance harder to sustain. That is why your presence can divide reactions so sharply. Some feel drawn. Others feel resistant. Some trust you immediately. Others distrust you without evidence. Your presence reveals people almost as much as it reveals you. This is also why you must be careful not to measure yourself by public ease. Not every room that welcomes you is healthy, and not every room that resists you is wrong about everything. But your job is not to make every room comfortable. Your job is to remain aligned enough to know what your presence is activating. Sometimes you enter a space and feel peace expand. Sometimes you enter a space and feel pressure tighten. Neither response should control your identity. They should simply help you observe where you are and what kind of atmosphere you are dealing with. Mature discernment means you stop begging the room to tell you who you are. You begin learning how to read the room without becoming ruled by it. And as you grow in this understanding, another layer becomes visible. The reason your presence affects people so strongly is because it carries history. Not the kind of history they can see on paper, but the kind heaven has written into your spirit. You are not just showing up as a random personality. You are arriving as someone who has endured pruning separation, unanswered questions, hidden battles, private refinement, and repeated invitations to betray yourself for the sake of belonging. Every time you refused to collapse into bitterness, something deepened in you. Every time you chose integrity over performance, something strengthened in you. Every time you endured misunderstanding without becoming false, something became more anchored in you. People cannot name that process, but they can feel its result. So when you wonder why others seem unsettled before they even know you remember this, they are often meeting the result before they know the story. They are encountering what your life has produced. They are sensing the gravity of a spirit that has been shaped, purified, and set apart in ways that do not need public explanation to be real. That does not make you untouchable. It does not make you flawless. It does not place you above correction or growth. But it does mean your life carries a presence that cannot be reduced to surface impressions. And once you accept that you stop apologizing for the emotional honesty your presence creates in others, you begin to walk differently. Not louder, not prouder, just clearer. You stop trying to look harmless in order to be liked. You stop translating your soul into smaller language so those around you do not feel uncomfortable. You understand that the room may not always know what to do with you, but that does not mean you are out of place in your own life. In fact, the very discomfort others feel may be part of the evidence that you are finally learning to stand in the full truth of your presence without abandoning yourself to make others feel safer in their illusions. And once that realization settles, the next truth becomes impossible to ignore. What people fear in you is often the part of themselves they have worked hardest not to face. And once that realization begins to deepen, you can no longer ignore the uncomfortable but liberating truth underneath it. Many people do not fear you because of anything you have done to them. They fear what rises inside them when they are near you. They fear the inner disturbance your presence brings to the surface. They fear the silent confrontation that takes place within them when they stand in front of someone who is not playing the same game they are. This is why their reaction can feel so irrational. It is not always a response to your actions. It is often a response to their own exposure. You have likely sensed this before without having the exact words for it. There are people who become guarded around you even when you have shown them kindness. There are people who become defensive around you even when you have not accused them of anything. There are people who misread your stillness as judgment, your discernment as suspicion, your boundaries as rejection, your confidence as pride. It can be confusing until you understand what is really happening. Your presence functions like a mirror, and mirrors are loved only by those who are ready to see. Everyone else tries to dim the glass. This does not mean you are walking around intentionally reflecting people back to themselves. It does not mean you are trying to expose their wounds, flaws, or contradictions. But when you carry a certain degree of inner clarity, when your spirit has been refined enough to stop chasing approval, pretending for acceptance, or collapsing under pressure, you begin to reveal contrast simply by being who you are. The contrast is what unsettles them. They may not have language for it, so they invent explanations. They call you difficult, mysterious, intimidating, proud, cold, or strange. Yet what they are often reacting to is not your character at all. They are reacting to the discomfort of seeing where they themselves are divided. A person who is deeply insecure often survives by managing appearances. They study how they are perceived. They adjust themselves to gain control. They read rooms constantly, not from discernment, but from anxiety. They need reassurance the way thirsty ground needs rain. Then they meet someone like you, someone who is not performing for every pair of eyes in the room. Someone who seems content not to chase approval. Someone whose value does not visibly depend on applause, and suddenly they feel unstable. Your ease makes them conscious of their strain. Your quietness makes them hear their own inner noise. Your lack of desperation makes them feel the desperation they work hard to hide. So rather than sit with that revelation, they decide you are the problem. That is easier than facing the truth. This is why fear around you can take such peculiar forms. It does not always look like obvious hostility. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining. Sometimes it looks like someone trying too hard to impress you. Sometimes it looks like someone becoming strangely competitive over things that do not need competition. Sometimes it looks like gossip that appears out of nowhere, as though people need a shared story to justify the unease they feel around you. Sometimes it looks like a person constantly testing your reactions, almost as if they are trying to locate your weakness so they can relax again. They do not realize they are telling on themselves, but they are. Every irrational reaction contains a clue. You have perhaps spent years giving people the benefit of the doubt, which is often a beautiful quality. You have told yourself they must be stressed, wounded, tired, misunderstood, or going through something difficult. And at times that may be true. Compassion matters. Grace matters. But grace becomes dangerous when it erases discernment. Not every strange reaction is innocent confusion. Some reactions are the result of an interior conflict that your presence activates. And if you keep pretending that all opposition is harmless misunderstanding, you will continue offering unnecessary access to people whose discomfort is quietly turning into resentment. Because this is another hard truth. If inner exposure is not met with humility, it often becomes hostility. When people feel seen in ways they did not choose, they have two options. They can become honest, or they can become reactive. They can lean into growth, or they can protect the false self more aggressively. They can ask why your presence troubles them, or they can decide to attack the source of their discomfort. Many choose the second path because it requires less courage. It is easier to criticize the mirror than to cleanse the face. It is easier to call you arrogant than to admit they feel small. It is easier to label you distant than to confess they cannot manipulate your spirit. It is easier to say you think you are better than others than to acknowledge that your self-possession reminds them of how often they betray themselves. This is why chosen ones so often become targets of projection. Projection is what happens when someone cannot bear to own what is moving inside them, so they place it onto another person. The fearful call you threatening. The dishonest call you suspicious. The controlling call you difficult. The unstable call you intense. The envious call you proud. The performative call you fake. Notice the pattern. People often accuse you of carrying the very thing they are wrestling to hide. Their labels are rarely random. They are confessions in costume. And because you are thoughtful, because you care, because you genuinely want peace, you may have made the mistake of taking these projections seriously. You may have sat alone afterward wondering whether you really were too cold, too much, too unreadable, too distant. You may have adjusted your behavior to prove you were safe. You may have over-explained your intentions, stretched your energy thin, trying to clear misunderstandings that were never innocent in the first place. But there comes a time in spiritual maturity when you must stop taking responsibility for reactions that were born in other people's unresolved interiors. You are responsible for your conduct. You are responsible for your tone, your honesty, your humility, your obedience, your integrity. But you are not responsible for the insecurities your presence awakens. That truth can feel sharp at first, but it becomes deeply healing. It frees you from the exhausting labor of emotional babysitting. It releases you from the temptation to translate your soul into whatever version makes other people least uncomfortable. It allows you to remain kind without becoming porous. It allows you to stay compassionate without becoming blind. It teaches you that inner exposure is not the same as harm. If someone feels unsettled because your presence reminds them that they are hiding, that is not cruelty. That is invitation. What they do with that invitation belongs to them. And here is something even more tender beneath all this. Many people who fear you are not evil. They are simply unready. Unready to face themselves. Unready to face truth without decoration. Unready to sit in the presence of someone who has stopped bargaining away their identity for acceptance. Unready to encounter a spirit that feels anchored when theirs still feels scattered. This is important because if you do not understand it, you may become bitter. You may start viewing everyone as jealous, malicious, or spiritually dark. But bitterness would only poison the gift you carry. The truth is more nuanced. Some people resist you because they are threatened. Some resist you because they are convicted. Some resist you because they are confused. Some resist you because they sense a depth they cannot categorize. Your task is not to hate them. Your task is to discern them. Discernment asks different questions than insecurity does. Insecurity asks, "What is wrong with me?" Discernment asks, "What is happening here?" Insecurity tries to fix itself to stop the reaction. Discernment observes the reaction and studies its source. Insecurity bends to earn relief. Discernment stands still and gathers information. This is one of the great shifts your life is calling you into. You must move from self-blame to spiritual observation. You must stop assuming that every tremor in a relationship is evidence that you have failed. Sometimes the tremor means the ground beneath someone else's false stability is cracking. And if you look back over your life honestly, you may see this pattern more clearly than ever. The people who feared you without reason were often the same people who needed to manage how others saw them. The people who were unsettled by your presence were often the ones hiding something from themselves or from the room. The ones who tried hardest to reduce you were often the least at peace within themselves. This does not mean you become suspicious of everyone. It means you stop calling yourself the problem every time someone is internally confronted by your existence. You begin to understand why your path has required so much inner strength. Because when people fear what you awaken in them, they will often try to persuade you to mistrust your own nature. They will nudge you towards smaller living. They will reward your self-erasure and punish your clarity. They will feel safer when you are uncertain. They will relax when you second-guess yourself. But that is not where your peace lives. Your peace lives in truth. Your peace lives in recognizing that some fear is not directed at your harm, but at your honesty. Not spoken honesty only, but embodied honesty. The kind that radiates from a person who has suffered enough to stop pretending. And once you understand that people often fear the exposure your presence creates, the next layer opens naturally. What unsettles them is not only that they feel seen, it is that your very existence quietly threatens the illusions they depend on to feel secure. And when you begin to see that clearly, another truth comes into view with startling precision. What people fear in you is not only the way your presence exposes them, but the way it quietly threatens the illusions they use to survive. Illusion is comforting. Illusion gives people a script, a mask, a role, a polished version of themselves that allows them to function without confronting what is fractured underneath. Illusion lets them call pride confidence, chaos, passion, control wisdom, and fear discernment. Illusion allows them to build lives around appearances, rehearsed identities, and carefully protected self-images. Then you arrive not with accusation, not with force, not with a speech designed to tear anything down, but simply with a kind of spiritual clarity that makes false things tremble. That is when the room changes. You must understand how powerful this is. Truth does not always announce itself with words. Sometimes truth enters as presence. Sometimes it stands quietly in the corner of a room and suddenly people become more aware of themselves than they wanted to be. Sometimes truth asks no questions, yet people begin answering defensively anyway. Sometimes truth does not confront outwardly, but illusion feels confronted by it all the same. This is why you have often experienced resistance that seemed disconnected from the actual moment. The reaction was not always to what you said. It was to what your spirit represented. You represented something stable in the middle of instability, something unmasked in the middle of performance, something sincere in the middle of strategy. And for those who depend on illusion to feel safe, that is deeply unsettling. You have probably seen this happen in subtle ways. A person presents themselves as confident, but around you their confidence becomes aggressive, brittle, or strangely theatrical. Another presents themselves as kind, but around you their kindness begins to show strain, as though maintaining the image requires too much effort. Another presents themselves as spiritually mature, but in your presence they become controlling superior or easily offended. Why? Because false structures demand constant maintenance. They can survive admiration, they can survive distance, they can even survive shallow scrutiny, but they struggle in the presence of someone whose spirit is tuned to what is real. The pressure is not created because you are attacking them. The pressure is created because illusion cannot fully relax near authentic substance. This is one reason chosen ones often feel misunderstood by people who live on surfaces. Surface people prefer easy categories. They want to know quickly whether you are useful, agreeable, impressive, manageable, or harmless. They want your identity to fit into something predictable. But when you carry depth, you do not flatten easily. You cannot be reduced into whatever makes others feel most comfortable. There is a complexity in you that comes from lived truth, from private wrestlings, from a soul that has had to stand before God in seasons where no audience could help you. That kind of depth is difficult for illusion to interpret because illusion only knows how to read appearances. It does not know how to rest in mystery. It does not know how to honor weight without trying to label it, compete with it, or control it. And this is why truth often feels threatening before it feels healing. People like to imagine that truth is always welcomed, always freeing, always embraced with gratitude. But in real life, truth usually disturbs before it liberates. It shakes false peace. It interrupts rehearsed narratives. It exposes the difference between who someone is and who they have been pretending to be. That exposure can be holy if the heart is humble. But if the heart is proud, wounded, or defensive, then truth feels like danger. And when truth feels like danger, people often turn against the vessel carrying it. They do not say, "This person is reminding me that I have been hiding." They say, "Something about this person bothers me." They do not say their authenticity makes my performance feel fragile. They say, "I do not trust them." They do not say their calm is making my chaos visible. They say, "They seem off." You have likely been on the receiving end of that countless times. Not because you were actually off, but because your clarity disturbed someone's arrangement with illusion. This is important for you to understand because without this understanding, you can become desperate to defend yourself against perceptions that were never formed honestly. You can spend years trying to prove that you are warm enough, friendly enough, easy enough, spiritual enough, humble enough. Or while missing the deeper issue, some people are not responding to your character fairly because they are filtering you through the threat your truth poses to their false comfort. That false comfort may take many forms. For some, it is the illusion that they are in control of everything around them. For others, it is the illusion that they are morally superior because they say the right words. For others, it is the illusion that they are deeply loved because they are deeply admired. For others, it is the illusion that busyness equals purpose, charisma equals wisdom, or attention equals value. Then your presence arrives and quietly rearranges the atmosphere. You are not dazzled by what dazzles them. You are not easily managed by the cues they use to influence others. You are not overly impressed by polished surfaces. You notice tone. You notice energy. You notice inconsistency. You notice what people are trying not to say. And because of that, they feel less able to hide inside the image they built. This does not mean you always speak your observations out loud. In fact, many times you do not. Many chosen ones are not feared because they speak constantly. They are feared because they see quietly. They do not need to announce every insight. They do not need to expose every contradiction publicly. But those who rely on illusion can sense when someone sees more than they say. That creates tension. It creates caution. It creates a strange kind of nervousness that may show up as coldness, suspicion, over-friendliness, or passive resistance. They feel that their usual strategies may not work on you, and that uncertainty makes them uneasy. This is why you must stop measuring truth by popularity. Truth is not always the most welcomed thing in the room. Often it is the most resisted thing, especially at first. If you keep expecting the world to celebrate your clarity, you will be hurt again and again. Some will celebrate it, yes. The sincere will often feel relieved by it. The grounded will feel safe near it. The honest will feel strengthened by it. But the false, the performative, the manipulative, and the deeply self-deceived will often interpret truth as a threat. Not because truth has harmed them, but because it has interrupted their illusion of safety. And perhaps one of the hardest parts of your journey has been learning not to make war with everyone who reacts that way, because your first impulse may have been to explain, repair, soothe, prove, or overgive until the tension disappeared. But some tensions are not yours to fix. Some tensions are simply the sound illusion makes when truth walks into the room. You do not have to become cold about that. You do not have to become suspicious or arrogant. But you do need to become settled. Settled enough not to collapse every time someone misreads your depth. Settled enough not to dilute your spirit just to keep others comfortable in what God may be trying to disturb. This is where maturity becomes sacred. You learn to let truth be truth without turning it into a performance. You learn to remain clear without becoming harsh. You learn to stop chasing acceptance from people who only feel safe around masks. You learn that your role is not to force awakening in anyone. Your role is to remain aligned, honest, prayerful, and discerning. If your presence becomes a mirror, let it be a mirror. If your presence becomes a disruption, let it be a disruption, not with cruelty, but with peace, not with self-righteousness, but with steadiness. Because the more anchored you become, the less tempted you are to apologize for carrying what God has formed in you. And once you stop apologizing for the truth, your life carries another deeper layer, begins to reveal itself. People do not only fear your presence because it exposes insecurity or threatens illusion. Sometimes they fear you because what rests on your life has been marked by God. And even those with no spiritual language can sense that something set apart is standing before them. And once you have seen how your presence exposes insecurity and unsettles illusion, you are ready to understand something even deeper. Something that explains why the reactions around you have often felt stronger than ordinary personality conflict. There are moments in life when what people sense in you is not just emotional steadiness, not just unusual clarity, not just a difference in character. Sometimes what they are responding to is the unmistakable weight of a life that has been touched, shaped, and marked by God. They may never say it that way. They may not even believe in such language. But the human spirit often feels what the mind has not yet learned to name. And when a person carries something set apart, people notice it even if they do not understand why they suddenly become uncomfortable, reverent, curious, defensive, or afraid. Being marked by God does not mean your life becomes easy. In many cases, it means the opposite. It means your path becomes narrower, more refined, and often more misunderstood. It means your life carries a signal that does not blend naturally with every environment. It means there is a difference resting on you that cannot be fully hidden under politeness, social skill, or normal conversation. This is why so many chosen ones spend years wondering why they cannot just move through the world unnoticed. They are not asking for attention. They are not trying to become symbols. They are often trying to live quietly, but the mark on their life has a way of making quiet visible. You may have felt this long before you ever had words for it. You may have sensed that your life has always carried unusual spiritual pressure. Doors that should have opened easily did not. Friendships became complicated for reasons that never seemed fully rational. Authority figures sometimes reacted to you with suspicion, scrutiny, or discomfort that felt out of proportion to the situation. People either felt drawn to confide in you or strangely determined to misread you. Again and again, your life may have unfolded in a way that taught you that neutrality is rarely how people experience you. They either feel something sacred, something unsettling, or both at once. That is not because you are dramatic. It is because a marked life often creates strong reactions. The world does not always know what to do with what is set apart. What is marked by God does not fit neatly inside the expectations of ordinary social exchange. It carries a certain gravity, a certain distinction, a certain inward order that makes people pause even if they cannot explain why. Some will call it presence. Some will call it depth. Some will call it mystery. Some will call it intensity. But beneath all these words, there is often a deeper recognition taking place. Your life does not feel casual. Even when you are silent, even when you are tired, even when you are doing nothing extraordinary, there is still something in the atmosphere around you that tells people this person is not merely moving from instinct, trend, or appetite. This person answers to something deeper. That is one reason misunderstanding follows chosen ones so often. People can sense that they are not dealing with someone who can be easily absorbed into the ordinary patterns of manipulation, shallow performance, or spiritual sleep. And for those who are comfortable in darkness, even mild darkness, that is troubling. Light does not need to shout in order to challenge darkness. It only needs to remain light. In the same way, a life touched by God does not need to constantly announce itself. It only needs to remain aligned, and alignment itself becomes disruptive in places where compromise has been normalized. This is why being marked by God is often misread by people. The peace on you may be interpreted as distance. The restraint on you may be interpreted as superiority. The discernment on you may be interpreted as suspicion. The focus on you may be interpreted as coldness. The boundaries on you may be interpreted as arrogance. People often misname what they do not understand, especially when it forces them to feel something they would rather avoid. And if you have not understood this, you may have spent years trying to strip yourself of the very qualities that were part of your calling. You may have tried to become more casual than your spirit really is, more open than wisdom allows, more available than peace can afford, more agreeable than truth permits. You may have tried to look less marked, less distinct, less set apart, simply so others would stop reacting to you with unnecessary tension. But a chosen life cannot be made ordinary by pretending. You can hide for a season. You can reduce yourself temporarily. You can delay the full acceptance of what rests on your life. But eventually the pressure of that calling rises again. Eventually the difference returns to the surface. Eventually you realize that your deepest exhaustion did not come from being misunderstood alone. It came from trying to live beneath what God had placed on you. That is a heavy kind of fatigue. It is the fatigue of self-reduction, the fatigue of acting smaller than your spirit knows it is, the fatigue of apologizing for the weight of a life that was never meant to be casual. And this does not mean that you become religious in a shallow, performative way. Being marked by God is not about looking spiritual for an audience. In fact, the truly marked often become quieter, humbler, and less interested in image as they mature. They do not need to advertise what heaven already knows. They do not need constant public confirmation. They are not addicted to being seen as chosen. If anything, many would prefer a simpler path. But their lives keep reminding them that something sacred has been entrusted to them, and with that sacredness comes distinction. Not distinction for ego, but distinction for purpose. Purpose is what many people feel when they encounter you, even if they would never use that word. They sense that your life is not floating. They sense that your presence carries intent. They sense that even your silence has shape. Even your stillness has meaning. Even your refusal to join certain conversations, compete in certain ways, or chase certain forms of validation communicates that you belong to a different order. That can comfort the sincere, but it can threaten the compromised. Because compromised people do not like reminders that another way of living is possible. It unsettles the agreements they have made with fear, vanity, bitterness, compromise, or self-deception. So when people fear you without reason, sometimes what they are really fearing is not you as a person, but what your life represents. It represents accountability without accusation. It represents holiness without spectacle. It represents depth without performance. It represents obedience without public applause. It represents the possibility that there is more to life than the shallow systems many people have built their identities around. And for someone who has spent years depending on those systems, that can feel like a threat. They may not know why your presence bothers them, but on a soul level, they are reacting to the mark they sense. This is why you must stop envying people whose lives seem easier because they blend in. Blending in is not always a blessing. Sometimes it is simply the privilege of carrying nothing that challenges the atmosphere. Your life was not designed for that kind of invisibility. There is a cost to being marked, yes. There is loneliness. There is misunderstanding. There is the ache of being interpreted through other people's fears. But there is also dignity in it. There is protection in it. There is purpose in it. The mark on your life is not random decoration. It is evidence of design, evidence of assignment, evidence that your existence was not meant to dissolve into the background of whatever room you enter. And once you begin to accept that not as vanity but as truth, something inside you becomes steadier. You stop wrestling so desperately to be ordinary. You stop asking why people react strongly when heaven has already shown you that strong reactions are part of carrying spiritual weight. You stop trying to be less visible in the spirit just because visibility attracts resistance. And instead you begin to walk with greater reverence toward your own life. Greater care, greater discipline, greater peace. Because if God has marked you, then your task is not to erase that mark. Your task is to carry it well. And carrying it well means understanding one more necessary truth. Much of the fear people project onto you does not even come from anything you say or do. It comes from the silent power of your self-possession, your stillness, and your refusal to beg the world for permission to exist. And that is where this truth becomes even more practical. Because so much of the fear people feel around you is stirred not by anything aggressive in you, not by harsh words, not by open confrontation, but by the simple fact that you are not begging for permission to be yourself. There is a kind of intimidation that has nothing to do with volume and everything to do with self-possession. It comes from stillness. It comes from a quiet center. It comes from a person who does not collapse into nervous performance just because other people are watching. And in a world where so many people have been trained to perform, compare, chase approval, and constantly adjust themselves to the crowd, your steadiness can feel almost shocking. You may not always recognize this in yourself because you live inside your own experience. What feels natural to you may feel rare to others. You may think you are simply being calm, careful, private, or measured. You may think you are just protecting your peace, choosing your words wisely, and refusing to force connection where it is not real. But what others often see is someone who is not easily pulled. Someone who cannot be hooked by every opinion, provoked by every mood, or manipulated by every emotional current. And because many people unconsciously depend on those currents to understand where they stand, your refusal to move with them creates uncertainty. Uncertainty is uncomfortable for those who need control, and discomfort often disguises itself as fear. This is why your stillness is often misread. People expect nervous energy because nervous energy is common. They expect over-explaining because over-explaining is normal in insecure environments. They expect self-advertising because that is how many people survive. They expect constant emotional signaling because shallow relationships are built on visible reassurance. Then they meet you, and you do not offer yourself that way. You are not scrambling to prove your worth. You are not rushing to be chosen by the room. You are not announcing your value every 5 minutes. You are not leaking your private world just to create false closeness. You are there fully present but not desperate, available but not cheap, peaceful but not passive. And for some people that feels deeply safe. For others it feels impossible to relax around because they cannot easily measure a person who does not need constant response. There is power in not being easily read by systems that were built to rank, label, flatter, and control people. Your self-possession interrupts those systems. It quietly asks a question without words. What do you do with a person who already knows how to stand alone? What do you do with a person who is not begging to be picked, praised, or publicly validated? What do you do with a person whose spirit is not on the auction block? For healthy people, the answer is simple. They honor that kind of presence. They feel relief near it. They recognize maturity when they see it. But for unhealthy people, your self-possession feels like lost leverage. They do not know where to grip. They do not know how to lead you with approval, manage you with silence, destabilize you with mixed signals, or pull you into performance with comparison. So they become uneasy. This is why intimidation around you often has no logic on the surface. Someone may treat you like a rival, even when you were never competing. Someone may act defensive when you have offered no attack. Someone may become cold because you did not chase them. Someone may grow irritated because your silence did not contain insecurity. Someone may project pride onto you simply because you did not immediately shrink yourself to make them comfortable. And if you are not discerning, you can begin blaming yourself for their reaction. You can think perhaps you should speak more lightly, smile more often, reveal more, soften more, reassure more. But often, none of those things are the true issue. The issue is that your existence is not organized around pleasing the unstable. That kind of freedom is confronting. You must understand that. A person who depends on external approval for identity is often unsettled by someone who has built identity somewhere deeper. A person who manipulates through charm becomes confused around someone who is not intoxicated by charm. A person who controls through emotional volatility becomes frustrated around someone who does not panic on command. A person who rises by constant comparison becomes uncomfortable around someone who does not seem obsessed with the scoreboard. In all of these situations, your self-possession feels threatening because it is not cooperating with the invisible rules they use to navigate life. And yet you did not gain this self-possession cheaply. It was built. It was forged. It came through seasons that were hidden, lonely, refining, and often painful. It came through times when you had no applause to lean on, no crowd to affirm you, no easy human reassurance to stabilize you. It came through being misunderstood and still choosing not to betray yourself. It came through losing connections that only worked when you were smaller. It came through learning that peace is more precious than popularity. It came through prayer, restraint, observation, grief, disappointment, and the slow rebuilding of your identity in God rather than in reaction. So when people experience your stillness, they are not just encountering a personality trait. They are encountering the result of battles they never saw. That is why your calm can feel so strong. It is not empty calm. It is tested calm. It is not the calm of naivety. It is the calm of someone who has already walked through storms and learned what deserves their energy and what does not. There is a difference between quietness that comes from fear and quietness that comes from mastery. Fearful quietness hides. Mastered quietness observes. Fearful quietness shrinks. Mastered quietness remains. Fearful quietness is waiting for permission. Mastered quietness already knows its place. People feel that difference more than they understand it. And if they are used to reading weakness, where there is silence, your kind of silence unsettles them because it is not weakness at all. It is discipline. You may also notice that your refusal to overshare creates distance with certain people. That is because not everyone seeks intimacy honestly. Some people seek information to measure, predict, or control. They are more comfortable when everyone is emotionally transparent in ways that make them easy to map. But you have learned that not every listener is safe, not every curious person is sincere, and not every invitation to open up is holy. So you move with more wisdom. You do not reveal yourself just because the room demands access. You do not hand your spirit to every outstretched hand. That restraint is not cruelty. It is stewardship. And still, to those who are used to quick access, your boundaries may feel threatening. Why? Because boundaries reveal entitlement. The moment you stop offering automatic access, people discover whether they actually respected you or merely enjoyed your availability. This is also why your lack of neediness can provoke strange reactions. Neediness is familiar to many people. They know how to interact with neediness. It gives them power. It gives them reassurance. It tells them where they stand. But your energy does not constantly ask, "Do you like me? Am I enough for you? Will you approve of me now?" That can make insecure people feel strangely unnecessary, and people do not always respond well when they are deprived of the role they secretly depend on. Some need to be needed so badly that they become uncomfortable around anyone who is emotionally whole enough not to clutch at them. Again, the fear is not about your harm. It is about their lost position, and this is where you must be very careful not to misinterpret your assignment. You are not called to become harder, colder, or more detached just because some people fear your self-possession. That would be a distortion. Your calling is not emotional starvation. It is emotional order. You are still meant to be warm. You are still meant to be loving. You are still meant to be open where God gives peace, generous where wisdom allows, and compassionate toward the wounded. But your warmth does not require self-abandonment. Your love does not require loss of center. Your openness does not require spiritual carelessness. Self-possession is not the enemy of tenderness. In its healthiest form, it protects tenderness from being exploited. So, when people fear you without reason, sometimes the hidden reason is simply this: your spirit is not up for sale. Your worth is not being negotiated in public. Your emotional state is not controlled by every reaction. Your presence is not pleading. Your silence is not empty. Your boundaries are not accidental. Your peace is not performative. And all of that creates a kind of power that does not need a spotlight to be felt. It is the power of inner government. The power of a life that has stopped scattering itself just to be accepted. And once you begin to recognize that you can finally look back over your life and see the signs that were already there all along, signs that this pattern was not imagined, not exaggerated, and not isolated, but repeated often enough to reveal what has truly been happening around you. And when you look back honestly, without minimizing what happened and without dramatizing it either, you begin to notice that the signs have been there for a very long time. They have appeared in different places through different people under different circumstances, yet they all carry the same strange signature. This is how you know the pattern is real. It is not built from one bad experience or one misunderstood season. It is woven through your life in repeated moments that tell the same story in different clothes. People have feared you without reason, and the evidence has often shown up, not in what they said directly, but in the odd, irrational, and revealing ways they behaved around you. One of the first signs is unexplained hostility. This is not normal disagreement. It is not the friction that naturally comes when two personalities clash or when two people genuinely see a matter differently. Unexplained hostility feels disproportionate from the start. A person reacts to you as if you have offended them before you have even had a meaningful interaction. Their energy toward you feels sharpened, cautious, or cold, without any real cause. They may smile in public, yet carry a private edge. They may answer you politely, while their tone carries resistance. They may seem irritated by your presence in ways that do not match anything you have actually done. And because you are reasonable, you may have kept searching for the missing event, the overlooked sentence, the accidental offense. But often there was no hidden event. The hostility was the sign. It was the reaction itself that contained the message. Another sign is constant misunderstanding. You say something simple, and it is taken the wrong way. You remain quiet, and your silence is assigned a meaning you never intended. You set a healthy boundary, and it is interpreted as rejection. You choose not to compete, and people act as though you think you are above them. You speak honestly, and suddenly your words are heard as overly sharp, overly intense, or strangely threatening, even though others say far more careless things without consequence. This kind of repeated misunderstanding is exhausting because it tempts you to over-explain yourself. It tempts you to become your own public translator forever, clarifying, softening, and adjusting in hopes that people will finally see you correctly. But repeated misreading is often one of the clearest signs that people are not responding to your words alone. They are filtering you through the discomfort your presence creates in them. Then there are the strange tests. This is a sign many chosen ones recognize only later. People start testing you in subtle ways, almost as if they are trying to discover where your weakness is. They interrupt you to see if you will break your calm. They ignore you to see if you will chase. They provoke you lightly to see if they can pull you out of your center. They withhold warmth to see if you will overcompensate. They make dismissive comments disguised as jokes to see whether you will shrink. They offer half-respect, uncertain invitations, mixed signals, and little social traps, all because some part of them wants proof that you are not as steady as you seem. These tests are rarely conscious in a fully formed way, but the pattern is real. People often test what intimidates them. They probe it, they pressure it, they look for cracks that will make them feel safer. And when the cracks do not appear, or at least do not appear as dramatically as they hope, the reaction sometimes intensifies. This leads to another sign, silent avoidance. There are people who do not openly oppose you, yet they move around you with a strange distance. They keep you at the edge of the room. They avoid eye contact longer than necessary. They remain cordial but noticeably guarded. They seem relieved when they do not have to engage with you deeply. At first, you might think they are simply shy, busy, or socially awkward, and sometimes that may be true. But repeated silent avoidance has its own energy. It often carries the feeling of someone who does not know how to relax in your presence, someone who would rather stay distant than risk being seen stirred or unsettled by closer contact. Then there is the pattern of people forming opinions about you too quickly. Before they know your story, they have already decided what kind of person you are. Before they have seen your heart, they have already attached labels to your name. You are described as intense, proud, mysterious, hard to read, intimidating, or distant by people who have barely spent real time with you. Quick judgments are often confessions of inner discomfort. They are the mind's attempt to control what the spirit does not yet understand. By labeling you fast, people feel they have regained some sense of mastery over the unease your presence caused in them. If they can define you, they do not have to sit with the deeper question of why you affected them so strongly in the first place. You may also notice a recurring sign in the form of misplaced competition. People compete with you when you are never competing with them. They compare themselves to you without invitation. They bring tension into simple spaces. They subtly try to outperform, outshine, out-talk, or outposition you, even when there is no prize on the table. This can happen in friendships, workplaces, family structures, ministries, creative circles, and almost any environment where identity and visibility are involved. The strange part is that you may not even be trying to stand out. Sometimes you are simply existing, doing your work, minding your peace, and still others turn your presence into a scoreboard. Why? Because fear often seeks control through comparison. If someone feels unsettled by your weight, they may try to reduce that feeling by turning you into a rival they believe they can beat. Another sign is selective scrutiny. You are watched more closely than others. Your words are remembered more sharply. Your mistakes are noticed faster. Your tone is analyzed more carefully. Things that would be overlooked in someone else become evidence when it comes to you. This is not your imagination. People pay close attention to what intimidates them. They study it. They collect impressions. They search for inconsistencies that will let them feel justified in their discomfort. This is why some chosen ones feel unusually observed throughout life. Not always in obvious ways, but in subtle, persistent ways that create pressure. You sense that you are being monitored for a reaction, a flaw, a slip, or a reason to confirm what others already decided to feel about you. And with scrutiny often comes gossip or narrative building. This is another major sign. When people cannot comfortably understand what they feel around you, they often build stories together. Stories create emotional permission. They reduce mystery into something manageable. So people talk, they exaggerate, they fill in blanks. They interpret your silence, your boundaries, your focus, your restraint, or your distance through whatever story makes them feel less unsettled. Sometimes the gossip is harsh. Sometimes it is subtle. Sometimes it looks like concern. Sometimes it looks like curiosity, but underneath it is often the same impulse to turn a spiritually felt tension into a socially acceptable explanation. Once a story is created, people feel safer carrying their discomfort because now it sounds rational. There is also the sign of unusual emotional reaction to simple boundaries. This one matters greatly. When you say no with respect, certain people react as though you have wounded them. When you do not give immediate access, they become colder. When you choose privacy, they call it distance. When you pull back from chaos, they call it superiority. When you refuse to overextend yourself, they act as though you have failed some invisible loyalty test. Healthy people may not love every boundary, but they usually respect it. Unhealthy people often experience boundaries as threats because boundaries reveal where they no longer have control. So if you keep seeing strong reactions to your basic self-respect, that too is a sign. It means your presence is not easily absorbed into systems of entitlement. Perhaps one of the saddest signs is the way some people seem to relax only when you are diminished. They are warmer when you doubt yourself, more comfortable when you over-explain, more approving when you make yourself smaller, more open when you act uncertain. This is painful to notice, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Some people do not want the real you. They want the reduced you. They want the version of you that does not unsettle anything in them, and that is one of the clearest confirmations that fear is involved. True love does not require your diminishment. True connection does not need your confusion. If someone prefers you unsure, apologetic, or spiritually dimmed, they were never at peace with your full presence. When you gather all these signs together, the pattern becomes difficult to deny. The unexplained hostility, the repeated misunderstanding, the subtle testing, the silent avoidance, the quick labeling, the misplaced competition, the selective scrutiny, the gossip, the discomfort with boundaries, the preference for your smaller self. These are not random fragments. They are parts of one message. They tell you that your life has been moving through spaces where your presence creates reactions beyond the visible surface. And instead of using that awareness to become paranoid, you are meant to become wiser. Wiser in where you invest. Wiser in how quickly you trust. wiser in how much you explain, wiser in recognizing when a pattern is speaking louder than any single event. This awareness is not meant to harden your heart. It is meant to steady your mind. Because once you know the signs, you stop letting every strange reaction drag you into self-doubt. You stop turning other people's discomfort into an accusation against your spirit. You stop assuming that confusion around you means you must be confusing. And most importantly, you stop shrinking yourself just to make people feel more comfortable around a version of you that God never asked you to become.